you for coming to this week's Black Community Stakeholder Call. As always, my name is Trey Baker. I'm Senior Advisor for Public Engagement here at the White House, and a very happy Black History Month to you all. Really excited about the things that we have going on here at the White House, and I'll talk about those things a little bit later. But we have a great celebration around Black wellness, and we've already had some really good activations. Thank you all for attending and watching so far, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we have coming up. Today, a little later, we'll also have Gene Sperling, who is the head of our American Rescue Plan execution arm here at the White House. And so we'll talk a little bit about where we are with the American Rescue Plan and how it benefits and works for Black communities. But before we do that, we're actually going to start today with Erica Lowe, our Black media director here, who's going to give an update on some things going on in Black media, some things that you should be looking out for, and then just an overall update on some of the things that we may be seeing in the news. So with that, I'll pass it over to Erica. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Hi, Trey. Hi, everybody. Well, hopefully you all were able to watch the amazing events that happened yesterday, thanks to Trey and, everyone on our team who, we had a historic convening of the Black cabinet members. You may have seen some stories in local media and the Associated Press. We live streamed with the Griot. Additionally, we had a mental health panel later in the day with Taraji Henson and Sloan Stevens, Susan Rice. I know Trey will talk about that later. So I hope that you all will, if you haven't seen it, look it up. It was really informative. It was really helpful. It was really historic. It was an honor to even be there. But I think the primary issue that I want to talk about is disinformation. I feel like we should call, my segment on these calls just Disinformation Station, because we are constantly dealing with disinformation. You may recall, the HBCU disinformation a couple months ago, where there was some machine that decided to spread false information about the Biden administration stripping money from HBCUs, and this was money that didn't exist. It was money that the president continues to push for, in addition to the historic funding that HBCUs have received. This week, I never thought I'd see the day, but we are dealing with crack pipes. And as unfortunate as it is, I imagine many of you saw the stories that the president and the Biden administration is funding and pushing crack pipes into addicts in underserved communities. And that's a part of our racial equity approach. And that's not true at all. There has never been, there will not be funding dedicated to crack pipes. There has been funding dedicated to safe smoking kits as part of harm reduction programs. Harm reduction programs are evidence-based, and the purpose of harm reduction programs is to help folks who are struggling with addiction and to stop the spread of disease and ensure that folks that are engaging in certain activities are engaging in them in a safe manner. There are no crack pipes involved. The grant that was specifically dedicated towards these harm reduction programs did prioritize underserved communities and Black communities. They prioritized Black communities not because we were pushing crack pipes to Black communities. They prioritized them because for so long, Black communities did not receive the adequate funding for these programs to help people dealing with drug addiction and various disease. So the president has taken a whole of government approach to equity. We stand by his whole of government approach to equity because there has not been a president in history that has been as dedicated and as vocal about issues of racial justice and issues of equity throughout. There have not, I don't know, and Trey, you can correct me, I'm not sure if there has been a president who on day one issued an executive order for every agency in government to prioritize equity and make sure that they are setting policy with a lens on equity. So I just want to be very clear about that. In addition to being clear, I want to just encourage you all to amplify the stories that are factual. I think, obviously we have always dealt with, conservative forces or the right wing putting money into, their narrative. And that's fair. However, I think when it becomes really problematic is when folks in our community pick it up. So there were numerous Black media outlets that picked up this information. There were, Black media influencers that picked up this information and ran with it, and people believed it. The Shade Room, we had a long conversation with them. They took the story down, but they took the story down after 60,000 people had commented and had believed it and had liked it and had then decided to bash the Biden-Harris administration for being crack pipe pushers. And I think that's really unfortunate. It's really dangerous. We're continuing to have these conversations and work with our Black media partners, and then also have calls like this where we work with our Black stakeholders to get accurate information out. So if you have questions, please reach out to me. Please reach out to Trey, and we'll do everything we can to get you the information you need to stop this disinformation from spreading. That's all I have.
Thanks so much, Erica, for another disinformation station. I like it. And we will send you our best talking points on that in this week's newsletter so that you can share the information with all of your stakeholders and all of the people in your organizations. So with that now, I did want to follow up on a little bit of what Erica was saying about Black History Month. We have a really robust set of Black History Month engagements around wellness. And this year's theme was given to us by ASALH, which is the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And ASALH's theme is generally Black health and wellness, particularly on the back end of COVID-19 and all that we've gone through as a community during COVID-19. And so this month at the White House, we're going to really examine Black wellness, from physical and mental wellness to environmental wellness, and how our communities can be made better, and how the Biden-Harris administration is working to make our communities better. Additionally, we're going to look in the next week to financial wellness, and those ways that we are helping to create Black wealth and create wealth across our communities. And then finally, we're going to end up with a real focus on spiritual wellness. As you know, the Black church is really the hub of our community. And for many of us, especially during the pandemic, the church not only acted as our spiritual guide, but it acted as a place to distribute food. It acted as a place to go and get a COVID test. It acted as a place to go get a COVID vaccine. And then also, so many churches in our community changed their mode of getting the messages out. And so many of us have virtual services. And so we're going to uplift all of those things this month. And we'll send you a rundown of things that we have coming up. As Erica pointed out, I definitely want to highlight the events that we had this week. We started with a historic convening of the 6 Black cabinet members, along with Cedric Richmond, who is the director of the Office of Public Engagement. And this, it was just powerful to have been in that room and to have the honor of working with these folks who are really standing at the top of our government right now. Not because they're Black, but because they're good and they're the best in the game. And they happen to be Black, and that makes us very proud of the work that they're doing, whether you talk about on the international stage with Secretary Austin, Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, whether you're talking about our finances and the money that operates this government with Cecilia Rouse, Shalonda Young, or you're looking at our domestic policy and issues ranging from housing to our environment with Secretary Marcia Fudge and Administrator Michael Regan. It was just really a powerful thing. So if you didn't get a chance to watch it, we really hope that you will go and watch it on YouTube. We will send the link. You would have gotten it, if you're on the email list, you would have gotten it in our emails earlier this week, but we'll send it back as a part of the newsletter that goes out this week. The second thing that we had was a Black mental wellness conversation that Susan Rice moderated. And it was phenomenal because there are so many things that are happening in the Black community, and so many places where we need support. And the conversation was wide ranging. It talked about it's a strength to be vulnerable, and that came from one of our guests. So we had Taraji P. Henson, the superstar actress, Sloane Stevens from the tennis world, and Nneka Ogwumike from the Los Angeles Sparks, who participated in this conversation along with our administrator for SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Agency under HHS. So again, that information will be on our website, and it will be in our newsletter, and you can go and just check out everything on YouTube, and we encourage you to watch it. Moving forward during Black History Month, we're going to have a number of engagements that we would like for you to tune into. So over the next 2 weeks, we're going to have a Black media panel that Erica Lowe is going to run, where we're going to talk about Black representation in the media and Black representation overall. And so we're going to tap into some of our celebrity influencers, as well as media moguls and heads of organizations who put out messages and really work to put out positive messages for Black communities. Additionally, we're going to have a panel around Black financial wellness, where we're going to take a look at all those things that the Biden-Harris administration have done in order to create wealth in the community, starting with, and we'll hear more about it today, the American Rescue Plan, and how the American Rescue Plan put shots in arms and money in pockets, and going from there to the bipartisan infrastructure law, which we'll see to help change communities, help change people who are contractors, and so forth and so on. We have so many programs at SBA and otherwise that we're going to make sure that we highlight as a part of Black financial wellness. Additionally, today, actually, the Vice President will be in New Jersey with Secretary Michael Regan, working around one of these issues of Black environmental wellness, where she'll be talking about just the number of lead pipes that we'll be pulling out of the ground over the course of the next few years as a result of this infrastructure package. And so then at the end of the month, we will end on a note, as I said earlier, of Black spiritual wellness. And so for those of you who followed us through the campaign and have since continued to follow us here, you know that the Biden-Harris administration is at the hip with the faith community, and we will make sure that we uplift them during what we're going to call our Soul of the Nation concert. You may remember this concept, but we're going to partner with gospel artists as well with TV One and the National Endowment of the Humanities to put on a concert to really uplift the faith community. I think it'll be something that'll be a really good note to end the month with, because it's so important for us to just remember that, and work through the Black History Month celebration by ending on a note of spiritual health. So that's the lineup across the administration. You'll be seeing activities to come from HHS and USDA. NASA has programs. You remember last year the Vice President spoke with an astronaut who's on the International Space Station. And so we're going to continue to have some additional engagements around the administration. And if you have any questions, any concerns, if you want to notify us about anything that you're doing or your organizations are doing around Black History Month that you would like to amplify, with us, be sure to send us an email and let us know the work that you're doing, and we will be sure to amplify that or be a part of whatever we can with your organizations. I think we are close here to having Gene.
Trey, I think it's also worth noting the trip to Newark today.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So as I said, the vice president will be in Newark today with the
Michael Regan.
Administrator of EPA.
Yeah. So I think what's important to note here is that the state of New Jersey is reporting that all of their lead water pipes will be replaced in the next decade, and that's a result of our infrastructure law, the infrastructure plan, and all the funding that the president put towards removing lead pipes. As we know, lead pipes disproportionately impacts communities of color. And I see Mr. Sperling here, so I will not take too long, but I just want to flag, that the first Black vice president and the first Black man to lead the EPA who led this charge are in Newark, New Jersey today, because all of the lead pipes in New Jersey are going to be removed in the next decade. And that's going to be a story that we're going to hear in Black and brown communities across the nation. So I just want to flag that. I encourage folks to read about that as well. And Trey, without further ado, we will introduce the guest of honor. Good to see you, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Erica. And so we're going to just jump right into it because we've got him on. Y'all know Gene Sperling. He's told us across years how to spend our money in the government and make sure that our economics are strong. He served, multiple presidents, and whether it was the Council of Economic Advisors or otherwise, and is one of the first to have served in that capacity for multiple presidents. Now he is our guru for the American Rescue Plan. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Where are we now with the American Rescue Plan? How is it impacting Black communities? So with no further ado, I'll turn it over to Gene Sperling.
Well, thank you. And these White House jobs are tough. It's very hard to plan. So I'm sorry I'm coming a little later in the program, but I'm really, really happy to be able to be part of this. Look, the American Rescue Plan, the 1-year anniversary is coming up on March 11th. And I think it is extremely important for all of us to make sure the world understands the human impact this has had. I mean, you read the economic papers right now, and it is like, well, people are saying, it's just this abstract thing, and there's these economic analytical, did it cause a little more inflation? Well, inflation is high everywhere in the world, whether people did a big American Rescue Plan or not. Is it a tiny bit higher in the US? Well, look, here's the reality. There are inflation and supply side challenges everywhere in the world. In Germany has the highest inflation since reunification. Europe, the highest since the euro started. The UK, highest in 20, 30 years. Everywhere is struggling with this. What's different about the United States is that our head of state acted boldly and has had a major positive effect on growth, major positive effect on jobs, major positive effect on unemployment. And what I really want to say too is that it is also having a major impact on the equity of this recovery. I have been around for a long time. I was NEC director under President Clinton and under President Obama. This is, so I've been through the good times economically. I've been through the very bad times. I will tell you one thing any of us know who've lived through recessions and recoveries. When the economy recovers, the macroeconomics recover. GDP goes back up, unemployment goes down, the stock market goes back up. There are these macroeconomic statistics that people point to. But here's what we all know. In a recovery, not everybody recovers. Not only does not everybody recover as well, but deep recessions, deep fallbacks have permanent negative impact on people's lives. There are always millions of people who never fully recover. Why? Because when you're unemployed, most of us have been unemployed for months at some point in our lives. It's no fun. You cancel things. You maybe like sell your car. You maybe sleep on someone's couch. You maybe borrow a little from the relative. But you know what? Most of us get through it. When you're unemployed for a couple of years, that is not the case. People who are long-term unemployed usually lose their house. They often lose their spouse. They often lose their health, and a huge number never economically recover. That's what long-term unemployment is. If you're entering the job market and you are in a terrible job market, I have to say after the Great Recession, youth unemployment was 17, 18% for 4 years. There are a lot of young people who did not get the start that they wanted in their careers because that job market was very weak for young people for years after. It scars you. It hurts you. You don't necessarily fully recover. You know who else doesn't fully recover? People who get evicted or foreclosed, get thrown out on the streets. They lose the house, the place they rent. These are things that are scarring long-term effects. And I will also tell you that it is often the case that it is minority workers and minority communities that suffer. Now, everybody wants to talk about the American Rescue Plan in abstraction. This has been the boldness of it, the strength of it, the design of it has done more on the equity side than any recovery package, I think, ever. Is it perfect? Is everything working great? No. Are people still suffering? Yes. But is it better designed on an equity base and to prevent that type of scarring and long-term harm and to actually use resources to lift people up? Yes. Long-term unemployment stayed high for 3 or 4 years after the Great Recession. It has fallen at the largest in the history of our country. The biggest fall, it's been more than cut in half since the American Recovery Plan. Youth unemployment, 16 to 24-year-olds, was 17, 18%. It's around 7, 8% now. It's one of the lowest it's been in the last 50 years. Evictions, with the emergency rental assistance, for all the difficulties, for the slow start, for the messiness, we are at 60% of normal evictions. They are lower than historically, still too high, but lower than normal. At when people had predicted there'd be a tsunami. Foreclosures are 1/3 the rate they are in a normal year. We have less lasting pain. Black unemployment, Black poverty levels, all of those things have been falling. The job market is tighter. Wages are going up for lots of people. But then let's also look at the design of some of our programs. The child tax credit. I mean, shameful fact, but it's a fact, is before the American Rescue Plan, half of all African-American children did not get the full credit. Half did. If it was 2,000, only half got the full 2,000. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris didn't just raise it to 3,000 and 3,600. It is the first time every child gets the full amount. So now every African-American child who is eligible gets the full 3,000, 3,600. That is why you're talking about 2021 being perhaps the record year for the fall in child poverty. I was just talking about the emergency rental assistance. You look at who that is helping. Again, I understand it was hard to start up a brand new program for the first time in 400, but it is having a disproportionately more positive effect who that is going to. It's not just out to everybody. It is going to places in need, places that are predominantly minority communities. I mean, these are programs that were put in place with President Biden and Kamala Harris's values in place, in which we focus on. And the reason I say this is it's going to be a damn shame if people sit there and debate, is inflation 1% higher or not, and miss that this plan and this type of boldness, not just for President Biden, but for the next time there's a crisis or the next time the crisis, should be understood as having led to a far more equitable recovery. I'll say even in the past times I've been in this White House, it is pretty historic. And I think we need to fight for it and defend it. There's a lot of things we still have to do with the American Rescue Plan. You know, we got to deal with learning loss, middle-class families everywhere worried about learning loss. We know there were a lot of minority children that were already behind a couple of grades and fell back further. Those are things from the pandemic we have to attack. Our state local plan allows every city to use funds, not just to deal with the incremental negative impact of the pandemic, but if exacerbated disparity, they can use it to deal with that whole disparity. So what I mean is that if it made a certain, if there was a health disparity that got a little worse under pandemic, you don't have to use that money just to deal with that a little amount that got worse. You can go after the whole disparity. You can go after trying to fix things that have already were deteriorating or disparities that already existed that got worse. These are the things in the implementation of this plan we have done with the president's executive order, but more importantly, with those values in mind. So no mission accomplished, no celebration, but boy, oh boy, we should not let the world fail to know that the design of this program is leading to a lot more equitable recovery than we have seen really in any recovery after a deep recession that I know of. So with that, I will stop. And if there's time for a question too, or if there's not, but some people want to wait over for a few minutes, I'm happy to take a question or two.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gene. We've got a couple questions if folks can stick with us for a little bit longer. Everybody's still very engaged and still here. So we'll start, and if you just do two questions here for us. This is from the Honorable Melvin Poindexter from East Watertown, Massachusetts. He asks, what does the American Rescue Plan mean for schools, specifically right now? And then what does the American Rescue Plan mean for women of color?
So I think the American Rescue Plan, it's a broad question. Let me give a couple of things. On the school side, the biggest program, the American Rescue Plan, was $120 billion, $22 billion went for what is called ESSER, but just think of it, that's the K through 12 funds. 10% of that goes to the state levels. 90% is distributed through the local LEAs or the local school districts. We have put some pretty strong measures in there. Everybody's used to a maintenance of effort. Like you gotta keep up the money you're already spending. You can't use the money just to supplant that. We have something called maintenance of equity. That's never been in a plan before, which means that you cannot cut back. When you receive this money as a condition of doing it, you cannot cut back in ways that have a racially disparate impact or even a disparate impact against people who are poor, regardless of their ethnicity or race. So it is set up to have higher standards for equity. I think that the key for us is making sure those funds, that there is pressure on local school district to spend those funds wisely. And this is one thing about the American Rescue Plan that is both good but challenging. Everybody wanted flexibility. Everybody wanted to say a school district here is different from a school district there. Everybody has their unique issues. So there's a lot of flexibility there. That's both a good part and a challenging. I like to quote Spider-Man with a slight adjustment. With great flexibility comes great responsibility. I think if you look at different school districts, some are coming through beautifully. Some are, getting ventilators, hiring tutors, hiring teachers. Others were not as clear. It's harder to tell. I think that one of the things that we have to do is that the issue of learning loss has captured the country. Everywhere in every community, middle-class communities, every community, learning loss is an issue. Everybody feels that their children may have fallen behind during the pandemic, during the Zoom school, etc. And so I think one of the important things is we want schools to address that. we want them to have literally an army of people who provide individual help, tutoring, extra people in the classroom or extra people who can work one-on-one with the student. And if there's, worries about COVID, well, you know what? When you're in a Zoom class, it's hard for a kid to concentrate. Not so hard to concentrate one-on-one with somebody. So there's a lot that can be done. I think one of the things we have to press on is, as much as we want to address the learning loss everyone's dealt with, we know who suffered the most. We know lower income suffered the most. We know that. We know that they, many were already behind, already had a math or reading gap. We've got to make sure that as people are using those funds, that they've got an equity lens in mind. So yes, they should provide extra help, extra tutoring to maybe everyone in their school or everyone in the school district, but they need to help those who are already behind, not just catch up for what they got behind, but to get back up to the starting line in a better position. So I think that is a place, though, where we need people to press district by district. We don't really have the ability to require a school. We can prevent a school district from using the money fraudulently or using something that's not an eligible use. But the hard part is making sure that they're using it for the highest priorities. And that really has to be done with kind of local accountability. On women of color, I will say that the drop in women of color unemployment rate has been strong. I think that there is no question that the child tax credit, and the fact that you have full refundability, and that whether you make $22,000 or $120,000, you get the same amount, has helped a lot of, has helped everybody, helped white, black, and brown Americans, but it has helped Black and brown Americans disproportionately, both with meeting costs of, dealing with the pandemic, reducing child poverty, but also just dealing with the extra costs. I think that the child care program that we have is another thing. $39 billion went to the states for child care. There are 150 to 200,000 child care centers that are up and going because of funds they are getting from the American Rescue Plan. I hate that is such a big secret. That has definitely helped women of color in two ways. It's provided more child care, so people did not have to give up work, and it's actually helped, with the jobs that are often run, child care centers that are often run, or providers that we know come in all sizes, small sizes. A lot of the smaller child care providers are owned by women of color and hire women of color. So that helps. But I will also say the following. Passing that component of child care and Build Back Better would help a lot, because when we talk to states and cities and we say, are you hiring more? Are you raising the wages of your child care providers and workers? Are you doing more there? A lot of what they say is, American Rescue Plan is great, but before I hire a lot of people, before I give everybody raises, before I set up a new apprenticeship or training program, I want to see that Build Back Better part come, because then I know I've got funding for 8 years and I can make that investment. So I think the American Rescue Plan is doing a lot. I think if we could get the child care that was in the Build Back Better passed, and people knew they had that significant funding for years, you would help both with the cost of child care, the capacity and supply of child care with child care deserts, but also people who own child care centers and work at child care centers who are disproportionately women of color. There is a lot of wins on the child care side. So I could go on, but those are a couple of answers.
Thanks so much for that, Gene. And you touched on the child tax credit. I wanted to just give you an opportunity. We've got several questions on the board about the child tax credit, and people just wanted to know more. Is there anything else you wanted to add about child tax credit?
Well, we're not where we want to be. I mean, I can't lie. My proudest accomplishment in doing implementation of the American Rescue Plan is that in 4 months, we got monthly payments out for the first time in the history of our country to 61 million kids. I mean, imagine this passed in March, and in July, were getting monthly payments on the same day every month, often direct deposit right into your bank account. That was making a huge difference. And the fact that it was full, that everyone got the same amount. You know, this is going to be a record year for a fall in child poverty, a fall in Black child poverty. And we are proud of that. We want that extended. I mean, you've all seen, we've had trouble getting the 50th vote for that. I want to let you know we have not given up. We are, you know, I mean, we haven't succeeded yet, but I promise you, I've talked to the president directly. He still wants it. He still presses it in his speeches, but, you know, it's hard. 50 votes does not allow you to lose one person, and it would sure help if we, if, you know, it makes, I'll just say, it makes it hard, but we are still fighting on that. Now, what we just did on February 8th was our vice president led a day of action on child tax credit and earned income tax credit. And what we wanted to say is, hey, while we're fighting for that, let's make sure everybody who signed up gets the full amount. Remember, if people got that monthly payment, that's 6 monthly payments. They only got half. So if somebody had 2 young kids and got 7,200, they got 3,600. We got to get them back to file to get their second 3,600. Also, another thing that's in the American Rescue Plan is that the earned income tax credit has been expanded ever since President Clinton had the major expansion. So it does a lot more for families with children, but no one's ever increased what President Clinton started with on workers who may not have dependent children. You know, those are everybody, but they certainly are certainly very helpful for a lot of young men of color, particularly. It's shown to be very positive. But Joe Biden tripled it, so now it's $1,500. And now instead of having to not be eligible till you're 25, you can be eligible at 19. So we want to get that word out. So we both want to make sure people are getting the child tax credit, that getting the second half of the child tax credit. If they didn't apply, if they didn't get the monthly payment, getting the full child tax credit, and people are applying and getting that first income tax credit. We got to be able to walk and chew gum on this one. We got to fight hard on that while we still fight to extend the child tax credit. I wish I could tell you some clear answer like, we got it, it will happen. You know, this is legislation with a thin margin. We're still fighting, and we think the impact has been so important for so many families, and so we're still doing everything we can, but we also want to make sure that while we're fighting to extend the law, everybody who's gets what they're eligible for in the American Rescue Plan. Because, you know, again, if somebody didn't sign up, they have 3 kids, you get them to sign up, that's $10,000, like $10,000 lump sum. You know, I don't have to tell you that could be very meaningful in a lot of people's lives who are really struggling right now.
Thanks for that, Gene. And just to conclude, we've got stakeholders from all across the country. They're faith leaders, they're business leaders, they're heads of organizations and everything. When people come up to them and they say, I was on the Black Stakeholders call today with Trey and Gene Sperling and Erica, what's their takeaway? What is the one liner that you would give people that they need to be telling about, the American Rescue Plan and its impact right now?
The American Rescue Plan was designed more than any plan to make sure we had an equitable recovery with a tight labor market that raised wages for people and that when you have a tight labor market like that when you have a weak labor market, it disproportionately hurts Black workers. When you have a tight labor market, it disproportionately helps Black workers. And that you had a program that was designed, both in its size, its boldness, to particularly ensure that this is an equitable recovery. And anybody who's kind of criticizing these things in abstract is not paying attention to the real impact it is having for those 27 million children of color who got the first full child tax credit, for the people who didn't get evicted because of the first ever eviction prevention strategy in the country, because you have a state and local plan that encourages people to spend on equity, that you have a education program that has a maintenance of equity. I think the whole design of this program has been done not just about getting that GDP number up or just the unemployment rate down, but making sure it's an equitable recovery. I've never seen, I don't know in history if there's been none that's been more designed that way. And it doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean we don't have other things to fix. But I will tell you, it is better. It is more designed that way than any recovery plan, I think, ever, at least since FDR.
That's big words from Gene Sperling. Equitable recovery is what we're doing. Gene, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for taking a little time over to talk to stakeholders.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for staying on. I'm honored.
Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next week for the Black Community Stakeholders Call, and we'll send out some email, newsletter updates for you. And some of this information that you got from Gene today will also be a part of that newsletter. So thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Trey, the one last thing I would tell people is March 11th is the 1-year anniversary. We will have paper out that really walks through the details, so you can just, we'll have some detailed paper, but we'll have some good charts and things that everybody can use to talk about the numbers. So if you feel like you didn't take good enough notes, do not worry. As Biden says, help's on the way.
we appreciate it, and help is on the way, and help is here in a lot of cases. So thank you all for coming.